Welcome to Voices from the Hill, celebrating the vibrant literary voices of the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm your host, Jennifer Barone, along with Joseph Carboni, owner of Telegraph Hill Books. Each episode, we sit down with a local author to explore their creative process, inspirations, and the unique stories that shape our community. Today, we are honored to welcome Kim Shuck, poet, artist, San Francisco Poet Laureate Emeritus, and curator of the Poem Jam literary series at the San Francisco Public Library. Her poetry collections include Smuggling Cherokee, Deer Trails, Exile Heart, and the recent Pick a Garnet to Sleep In and Noodle Rant Tangent, each a beautifully crafted reflection of memory, place, and community. She has also edited and co-edited over 10 poetry collections with Bay Area writers, and from her art, including a current project on extinct, extirpated, and endangered animals, her beautiful beadwork and basket weaving projects, to her poetry that honors Indigenous heritage, Kim invites us into worlds of depth, resilience, and profound storytelling. We are thrilled and honored to dive into her inspirations, her practice, and what's next for this remarkable artist living and writing in the San Francisco Bay Area. So let's jump in. Kim Shuck, welcome to Voices from the Hill. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Anytime I get to spend with you, Jen, it's just a pleasure. And I'm honored you asked me to be part of this series.
Oh my gosh, you're one of the first people on my mind. I mean, when I think about poetry, when I think about San Francisco, when I think about the Bay Area, I mean, you encompass so much just depth and beauty for me. I've had the great honor and pleasure of seeing you perform, coming to your Halloween parties, which are incredible and amazing, and just seeing your incredible art. I mean, there's just so much to talk about today, so I'm so excited to hear about the new projects and things that are on your mind. So I want to maybe kick us off, or have you kick it off with reading some pieces from maybe recent work or something that's top of mind to you, and then tell us a little bit about it and tell us why it holds special meaning for you.
Okay, I'll read you a couple. I've been doing these collections, splitting the year up in different ways, and this is from the Wheel of the Year, which was a project involving the pagan calendar. Transforming weather against a cold winter, years and miles from that home, I tell you now that I will wear freshwater pearls, will take the healing, will whisper old names of place to water, stands of trees, thumb-polished hills, healing stones, and tea weeds. I tell you now that as I set my feet against the now storm, claim center, that my love strength is great enough to take part in what comes next. I'm going to read this one because it reminded me of you when I wrote it. Reading to each other is like tucking one blanket, another, warm, a potluck of smiles and unusual nouns. And then maybe this. Water level in the marsh is high, egret, elegant on an offering to the gods of the wetlands, shredded tire, dead hot water heater. We hold ourselves light. This round we hunt the rainbow as this month closes in. This may be winter, but there are more bitter months coming.
What is inspiring you to write on this topic of the Wheel of the Year?
It's one of a series where, you know that I write every day. Yeah. So I write every morning. And actually from a bit of advice that I got from Diane DePrima, which was, if you write every day at the same time, your body will start to crave it. And I had that advice years and years ago. So it stuck with me, and I've done it, and it's very true. If I sit down in the morning, I will end up with work. So that's good. And it's a combination of that and, the memory function on Facebook, because I used to publish my poems every day on Facebook, and they will give it back to you as a memory some years later. And I've noticed that I tend to write about very similar things at the same time every year. So there's something about that cycle. So that's really why I'm doing it. So I did the calendar we're all sort of have imposed on us one year, and then put those into tiny little booklets that I could carry around and read from. And then I did the Wheel of the Year and put those into tiny little booklets. And weirdly, I'm now working on the Cherokee calendar, which is my indigenous heritage. And it's kicked off a bit of debate in my social circles about translations of what we called the different new moons and full moons, because some of the translations on Wikipedia are sketchy. And I was not surprised by that, because I figure that most Wikipedia pages should actually start out with, "We reckon."
Yeah.
And be a little more vague about their assertions, because some of them are pretty off. Being the subject of one of those Wikipedia pages, there's a bit that I've been trying to get off of there since they put it up. But since you can't edit the page about yourself, I'm having some trouble getting it off of there.
What's your experience with following the moon, just like in your life?
Well, if you do it as a practice,
Yeah.
it's a good pause meditation moment. If you are with Mongolian Hawaiian guy for 15 years in your life and have 3 kids with him, you end up doing moon viewing at a certain time of the year, which will make you more aware of that if you were not before. And if only because the kids love the cakes. When I say kids, my children are probably the age or older than most of the people listening. I have adults now rather than children. Yeah, so my experience of it is that I was always sort of aware of the cycles of the moon, and then it got reinforced over years of being with Brian, and it got reinforced. It's a good hook for a poem if you are struggling. I mean, it might not be a publishable poem, but it's a good way to start a poem as to what is the moon phase and what does that mean. And then the idea of, I guess we'll call them prayers that relate to where the moon cycle is. So there are all kinds of things that will come back to you and lead you back there.
I know that my life changed quite dramatically when I started to become conscious of the moon, and then my body started to literally sync up to it.
Yeah.
Because obviously women's bodies are going through phases much like the moon, and to have your body sync up to viewing the moon is quite profound,
To be part of nature rather than outside of it.
Or the cosmos, literally part of it.
Exactly. These cycles of the world we live in rather than some sort of externally imposed thing. The issue of exploring calendars the way I'm doing right now is interesting, because it will... San Francisco, where I was born as well as done all of these other things, has got a really specific climate. And people go, oh, it's not different from one part of the year to the other. And then they also say silly things like, oh, it's never that hot here. Yeah, it is. It's hot for about a week. And everybody goes around saying, it's never that hot here, and panicking because none of the houses are built to accommodate, hot weather.
Right.
But it does have cycles, and they're not necessarily related to the heat or other things like that. They're related to the level of fog and when it comes in and when it goes out, and being aware of what's around you. I was astounded to find that most people don't know how to look at the bay and tell you whether the water's coming in or going out, because it changes color. I mean, it's dramatic. It's not subtle.
Right.
And I was in a car with a friend, and I said, "Oh, the tide's going out." She goes, "How can you tell?" I was like, "Look at the water." And if looking at the water doesn't help, you can look and see how the boats are at anchor, because the water is shifting. And the other day we were at a club that I had not known existed. In all my years being here, I'd never been there, but there was an art show, and we went to go see a friend's photography show there. And we're sitting outside for a minute, and I said, "Oh, the tide just shifted." And everybody went, "What?"
I love that you're connected.
Did you not hear that?
Yeah.
Well, we're 5 generations into this place at this point, right. So, I'm sure I've evolved somewhat, shifted somewhat in my genes to be living here,
Well, there's so much about your work that is about people, but there's also this really strong connection to place, right? It's like, and even what you're just talking about right now, such a beautiful sensitivity to the environment that I'm hearing that maybe even just the average person doesn't have that connection to. How do you connect that? Because I feel like poetry is like that too. Poetry requires this like viewpoint into seeing things that most people don't often see. But how does this connect to your work?
I think it's fundamental. Quite often people blame it on me being indigenous, but in fact, my Polish grandma was also that way, and that's the side of the family that we've been here for a long time. I think if you're willing to commit to actually being in community with a place, you start noticing things, and you develop your own mythology around the place. Mm-hmm. So as we're driving over here, my partner and I are mentioning where, we're pointing out houses and apartment buildings where our family has lived and where people we know have lived, and just making those connections. Somebody asked me about a poem I wrote, probably 25 years ago, in which I was telling the time by birds, that the trip took a certain number of birds, and specific birds. And he said, "Do you always tell time by birds?" And I was like, "No, sometimes it's leaves and
the fog, the tide."
Yeah, the tide. But
it's so alive. It's so rich.
It's all doing its thing. Even in the city. I mean, even in cities, this is a real thing. And people who are only here for a minute, people who are here because it's a cool place to live or for whatever reason, who are not invested in community here, who want their little unitary bubble in whatever apartment they rent, potentially in one of those ice cube trays down South of Market. When you want to shut yourself off from that, it's possible to do it, but you will probably not be noticing some important things, Like Doug and I both know, because we have been around the city a long time, what drains are likely to flood up badly enough to where it's unwise to drive a car through.
Which today is important information because it's raining outside right now.
It was bucketing this morning. It was not just raining, it was big. And so that is why I managed to get here at the time I said I would be here. And
amazing.
That happened because we know that. And we managed to avoid a larger than normal puddle up on Broadway on the other side of the tunnel. Because we both know that happens. So sometimes it's worth your while to step out of your own head for a minute and pay attention to what's going on. I also happen to write about those moments.
Yes,
you know.
You do beautifully too. Well, you talked about the moon, but then you also have this project that you just mentioned to me about extinct, extirpated, and endangered animals. And I was just reading one of your poems this morning about, I think, the wolf coming back to San Francisco.
Well, the wolf's coming back to California.
Yeah, to California.
Yeah.
And I was like thinking, it was making me think about the COVID era, and I felt like during that time when the city quieted down, we were able to actually connect more maybe to the animal world that is living even in this city. Like, for instance, the coyotes were howling on the street corner, and it was viscerally apparent that we are living in community with different types of animals that maybe we don't notice often.
Sure.
Or should notice more often. But can you talk a little bit about this project and what's going on here?
Yeah, but first I just want to say, did you guys not get a mountain lion during that
yes,
period?
Yes, we did. It walked over the Golden Gate Bridge and down in Embarcadero.
It's like, what's over here now that I'm not dodging as many cars? Yeah,
unbelievable.
Wild.
And then I think it wound up going into San Bruno Hills.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. in the same time period, they found a mountain lion at the playground I used to play at as a child, up in the dog park part. And I don't know what that means because it was not a dog park part when I was playing there. So, these things reemerge. We think we've chased them off or something. They tend to reemerge, but not without a little bit of shift on our part. So the project I'm working on comes from a project I did a couple of years ago, which I was contemplating community in larger sense. And I remembered that my great-grandmother told me her father had taken her to go look at a pile of dead buffalo and said basically that's how much they want us dead. And this would be my native grandmother. And I thought about that for a minute, and I thought, did the numbers, and went, my grandfather would have been in Chicago at a time when he could have seen passenger pigeons. And I started thinking about extinctions or reported extinctions. About that same time, I think they said that some animals that were closely related to the dodo had moved back to Mauritius and were like transforming back into a thing more like a dodo, that like these genes are malleable and they will adjust to the current circumstances to an extent. And I thought that was interesting, and that all sort of turned into a project where I did 8 beaded pieces and 8 poems for each of my grandparents about places they lived or how the family had gotten to those places, and animals that were extinct along the way.
Wow.
And a lot of people were like, that must be depressing. I'm like, sort of. But I think it's good to be aware. We talk about these things in the abstract, and I wanted to make it personal. And I'd also, while I was poet laureate, in a project that didn't end up happening in quite the way that I anticipated it, I ended up writing poems and doing beadwork for a tour of the Presidio, the Tennessee watershed, that you can look at on your phone. And so the poems are recorded, and they're also written out, and the beadwork is photographed in there. And so it's this tour, which a walk that I usually did from the Arguello Gate down to basically Crissy Field.
Was this around El Pauline Spring?
It was around El Pauline Spring. And there were all these things that they told me when I came into the project that, this thing is extinct and we never see that anymore. And then while I was there, they found one of the plants in sort of a weird corner of the park. And then and then they found one of the insects, and they hadn't had checker spot butterflies there for a while.
Wow.
And they had just replanted their wetland there
Yes.
with things that they eat, and it's sort of remarkable, like, not. If you planted things something eats, you might find that it's, it comes back. So there was one morning when it takes a bit for the sun to get into the little cut that Elpaline Spring is in. And when the sun came up over the hill and hit the boardwalk, in about 10 minutes, there were about 1,000 checker spot butterflies. So I'm kind of hopeful about a lot of this stuff. I also got followed around by a young coyote the whole time I was there.
Oh, wow.
Every time I was there. It's kind of strange. But there's a resilience and a presence. And if you stop insisting on planting grasses from other places and you actually plant things from here, some of the animals that eat those might come back. So yeah, so that's where the idea came from. And the current project is I picked things that I'm not sure I was aware of along the Pacific coast. And by the Pacific coast, I also mean places that we refer to as territories and anything that touches the Pacific. So the farthest north so far is a thing called the Stellar sea cow. And then I read Georg Steller's reports and decided that I wanted to decolonize that. So I had to hunt about a bit to find out what the name of that was in one of the native languages that encountered those, and they're called Aluki. Everybody told me, you're not going to find it. They went extinct in the 1700s. I was like, are you kidding? The Caddo people remember what they called the giant ground sloth. Somebody knows this word. It will be a grandma, and she will be remote, but someone will know, and I will be able to find it if I'm persistent enough. So I'm in the business right now of decolonizing some of the other words, but
Wow.
one of the things that I beaded for it was I think it's called the Strollinger's Parnassian butterfly, which is the first insect we know for sure was made extinct by urbanization. So it's when we covered up all of the sand dunes. We got rid of the plants that they eat, and they seem to be gone. At the same time I was doing that particular piece, I read something about the green hair streak butterfly that a whole bunch of people in the I think it's the Sunset, but it's the Sunset or the Richmond. They've been planting the plants that they like, and they're getting them. They're showing up.
Wow.
So it doesn't take a whole lot of effort.
It kind of feels like love, like when you want to like invite love in, you have to be kind of like tender. You have to put some flowers around.
A little bit
make it welcoming. And then the animals come back.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that holds true for people too.
I do too. I think anytime you want a thing, you've got to make the space ready for that thing, and then maybe you might get it, and if not, you have to be more patient. And,
Yeah, you got to set the mood.
yeah, I mean, I made good friends with a raven during the shutdown. And she and I are kind of buds, and Doug will tell you, my partner will tell you if you ask, that if I have failed to leave a cashew on the front porch for this raven, and he is sitting in the front room, she will yell at him to go get me to do it.
We're having conversations with everything.
They are. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Did you read the essay in Noodle Rant Tangent about, people are always asking me how it is I notice birds, and it's like,
Do you want to read a little something from it?
no,
Okay.
but
Because I have that book with me.
but
My
there's
personal
one in which I
collection.
talk about how to notice birds,
Yes.
you know. And I've totally infected my poor partner who used to go on road trips, and he'd be like, how is it you're noticing all of these raptors and these different birds and stuff? I'm like, it's a matter of practice,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Is this something that you think, like, the practice of poetry gifts us?
Sure. What is poetry if it's not attention to detail? Nerdy attention to detail.
For sure.
A whimsical sense of our place in the world. It's what it's for.
Absolutely.
I think it's actually what we're for.
I love that even better.
You know, I mean, what is it? I can't remember who he's talking to. I don't think that person was important to me, but Keanu Reeves was interviewed not that long ago. And the person was like talking about globalism and all this stuff. He goes, maybe we're not here to be in charge. Maybe we're just here to be curious and explore things. I am totally misquoting him, but I just found that that was the content of what he said, and I just found that charming. I think that's right. I think the best use of a life is to approach it with curiosity. And, you know, people have all these fears about their income and all kinds of things. And I'm here to tell you, I've been a professional artist for a really long time, and it's gotten close, but the world catches me. It always has.
I was just having this conversation with Mark, who was here, Mark Bittner, who had lived out on the streets for a while, and he was writing about that. But we were talking about that there's this energy, like an invisible energy that kind of exists that, takes care of us, that we have a connection with if we decide to have a relationship with it. But there's an aspect, maybe even with working with nature in that way, where there's an invisible layer, kind of a liminal space.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what that thing is. I know what some people call it.
Yeah.
But I think I think the world does tend to lean towards taking care of everything. And that the people who want to amass everything haven't read enough about what happens when you do that. You know, I have a lot of opinions about these things. I also think, for example, I don't know why this feels related to me. Maybe you can contextualize it for me a little better. But if you think about some of the bad things that have happened to Britain over the years and the strange choices that they make, like, oh, I will pry this artwork off of this wall. And haul it home, now it's mine. Or I will chip this stone out of this statue of a god where it's been carefully placed and energy's been put into it, and we're going to put it in our crown jewels, and things just start going sideways from that point.
Right.
And I just think, you know, if you mess about with the way energy is flowing without understanding it, you sort of risk doing yourself a damage.
Yeah, there's something in there, like a lesson of the ego.
Yeah, something. Ignorance is bad, arrogance is worse.
Well, you were talking a little bit about decolonizing, like naming. Like, can you talk to me a little bit about like the importance of names, like for you, especially when you're writing about these subjects?
Yeah. Well, we know as writers that the word means a lot, and that every word is sort of a collection of where it's been, if you know what I mean. Like the etymology of words is fascinating to me, and so there's a certain taking possession that happens when you name a thing, and there's this really interesting sort of Western perspective that your name has to be on everything. It kind of goes along with graffiti and other things, you know, and I kind of get that, like the power of the word is real, you know, but for the longest time there's been this sort of notion, first of all, that all Native people have passed away. We're gone. There are no more of us. I used to hear that all the time at school, from teachers quite often. And the fact that the teachers could often not pronounce, they won't pronounce or they can't pronounce people's names with any fidelity. It's important, you know. And so, in particular, in this area, in California, but in this area in particular, and in the LA area in particular, I think it's really important that we use and are more aware of more of the names that are pertinent to this place, that come from this place. First of all, because they know more about the things that they're describing. That straight up, you know. And second of all, because those clues are essential to us. On the hill that my grandmother's house is on, where my kids live now, but I lived there for many, many years, there's this one spot in an intersection that every time after it's been very dry for a few years and then it starts raining, there's this spot that just collapses into the ground. It happens every time. They don't seem to be able to work out how to prevent it from happening. And I believe, though I have never looked at their schematics, that it has to do with the Arroyo Dolores, which comes down the hill from Twin Peaks, goes through my grandmother's backyard, down into, the Dolores Park area, Mission Dolores area. And I'm pretty sure that once upon a time somebody could have told us some things about that arroyo, like when to predict when it's going to run, because it doesn't run all the time. It's mostly a dry creek bed.
Right.
But when it does flow, it really does. So it floods my neighbor's basement.
Yeah.
And because their drainage is bad, it eventually floods my basement. It caused a shift in the foundation of two houses up from ours. There are things you should be able to find out from people who've lived here for longer than a minute.
Yep.
That we don't. So that's part of what naming is. But also there's a beauty and an insight that goes along with each of these words. It makes it important to at least have some idea like what they are and how they relate to other words in that language.
I'm hearing that there's knowledge in the name, like there's wisdom in the name. There's information in the name that we're missing if we don't have it.
Yeah, their whole lives in each name.
Right.
Yeah.
What
was this hill called? I don't know.
Mm.
I don't know. If I lived here, I'd probably try to find out.
Mm.
There's
been, what have they been starting to do? The daylighting of little streams and creeks a little bit. I noticed that like around El Poling Spring, actually.
Yeah, the Tennessee watershed, they totally daylit that.
It's so cool.
Yeah, and almost immediately things started coming back.
Right.
And they also, unfortunately, I don't know, Mountain Lake Park is an interesting case. And I don't know any of this from my own research. I just know it because I heard the stories when I was doing stuff out at the Presidio. When they tried to work with Mountain Lake Park, they drained it and they scraped the bottom, right? And they tried to reintroduce stickleback and floating clams. And so what they have now, because the stream isn't as active as it was for reasons of human intervention, they have aerators. So basically what that is now is it's an aquarium, but it's a really big one.
Wow.
They've reintroduced the stickleback. Anyway.
Wow. Well, I've noticed not only is the subject of nature, animals, like appearing in your poetry and your writing, but it also appears in your beadwork. It also appears in your art. Can you tell us a little bit about your beadwork, about your art? And then I also want to hear, because I've noticed recently on your feed you've been posting these gorgeous photos that Doug took of your math baskets.
Yeah.
And I want to know about, what is a math basket?
People have been asking me that. There. No, let's see. Let's start with, where did we start? Something about animals in my beadwork.
Yeah.
So my beadwork, we don't know when I started doing beadwork. Nobody currently alive knows. I've asked my parents because people always ask me that question, and I don't know the answer.
Did you do it since you were very
Yeah, since I was tiny.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Since I was so quite tiny. I have thoughts about when I started learning to do that, but I'm not sure. But traditional Cherokee beadwork is kind of underknown. People are used to seeing Great Plains work. We're Eastern, Southeastern. And the beads, of course, came with colonization, but the patterns were there in other forms before that. So we're sort of a pattern kind of crew rather than animals kind of crew. And when I see a pattern, I'm always curious, like, what did that come from? And so there's a whole lot of looking at plants that are indigenous to where we were at that time. Also looking at petroglyphs from the area and stuff to try to figure out, like, what is that pattern, apart from, there are some logical things that happen if you are working with anything that kind of sets up in a brickwork way. You end up with diamonds, end up with zigzags. I mean, anything that sort of offsets by one or half of one every row. So I've done a bit of that, and I've done it more in basketry than in beadwork. But I think my work has taken a couple of leaps in topic. One of them came because I was teaching in American Indian Studies at San Francisco State University, where I professed for a certain period of time. And I was looking at different tribal things, and I wrote a paper that's probably my most popular thing I've ever written that nobody in the poetry world has read, which is Say How to American Indian Barbie, where I was dealing with Barbie dolls and the way that they approach the other.
Wow.
And which is pretty much with few clues about what any of it means. But people enjoyed that essay, and I started bringing the dolls in to my oral literature class. Like, how do you learn things? How do you know things? A lot of people learn about Native people from these dolls, and what does that mean, and how does that affect us? And then somebody's grandmother said, well, if you're going to show how they're misrepresenting us, you should probably have some of our dolls to represent how we represent us. And I thought, that is genius. Thank you for that input. And I made a crow doll, a human doll with a crow head. And I remembered how much I hate sewing. And this is not a minimal thing. I really loathe it. So I instead started beating heads on sticks.
Oh, wow, that's right. Which appears on the cover of one of your books.
It appears on the cover of one of my books, and also on the cover of a book by, this is horrible, I can't think of her name. Can't think of her name. Anyway, my beadwork appears on the cover of a lot of my books. It's on the Wizard Cat is on the cover of Pick a Garnet to Sleep In. Oh, it's also, there's a deer on the cover of Deer Trails, a buck, which is also one of my beaded pieces.
It's amazing. I got to see some of these pieces in person at a retrospective of your artwork at the San Francisco Public Library, the main library, and it was just an epic retrospective of your beadwork because it was taking so many forms. It was some of them were flat, some of them were three-dimensional. It was gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of view myself as an impressionistic bead artist in that it's often called not traditional, but I'm bringing all the same stories forward, so I think I would argue that it is traditional. It's just not usual.
Right.
It doesn't manifest in the same way. I use different sized beads, which there's an aesthetic in native beadwork that it be perfectly flat. So every once in a while I do a perfectly flat, absolutely a clean bit of beading with perfectly straight lines, just to prove to everyone I can still do it. But I like working 3D, and I like doing animals, and some of them are flat. I'm going to be doing the Poem Jam in December. I think it's the 11th of December, but I'm not sure. Second Thursday of the month. I'm presenting the work that I've been doing for this grant, and there will be really big photos. We're projecting images of the beadwork that I've done for it. And the reason we're doing that is because it allows everybody to see it rather than trying to put them up and have a bunch of people try to look at each individual piece. And I use really small beads, so if you actually want to get a very good view of it, you need to make it bigger.
Yeah, when I look at your work, I think it must be meditative and very labor intensive.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But this is where I'm at right now, is these animals, and I have to have a reason to do them. And sometimes it's, ultimately the choice of animal or plant species comes from what I think is gorgeous, or disturbing, or I'm offended by how it got extinct, or, they're whimsical for sure. The 3D pieces are really whimsical. The flat pieces tend to be more literal. I don't know.
Tell me a little bit about the math baskets.
Math baskets. So all baskets are math baskets. Southeastern flat splint work, it's plating, not weaving. And the difference is in plating, you start with all of the material you're going to use. So it's not built up in rows, it comes up at diagonals. So it's all that. So I used to work with a mathematician from the Exploratorium, and I did a lot of math myself. I was a math goober my own self. But I used to work with a guy from the Exploratorium, originally from France, who, if you took particle physics at any time in the last 50 years, you've been working out of his book, that we used to show people what pi means. 3.1415 pi. What pi means by using a plated basket. So you start with a square base, you weave up, and by the time you get to the lip, it's circular. You've added nothing, you've subtracted nothing. So the base is the same measurement as the top. And then you show them what had to change to make the square into a circle. So Greek mathematics says you can't square a circle, but you can circle a square. You just have to get out of the flat.
Interesting.
So he used to grab people's baskets when we'd be working with a high school, and these children had labored to get their first basket out, and they're pleased with it, and he'd grab it and write on it with a Sharpie. Which offended a lot of people, and I was actually offended by that behavior as well. So I used to, before we'd have a series of classes, just make a big bag full of these baskets so that when he would try to steal somebody's basket and show them, I'd just provide him with an alternative to scribble on. And this has got to be the nerdiest transitional art moment of all time, but I was watching Star Trek Next Generation one day and was not really paying attention to what I was doing, and I put the wrong number of corners on the basket, and it changed the shape entirely. So these baskets are not standard shaped baskets, and they would be inconvenient to store things in or gather things into, but they do serve as sculptures.
Yeah, they're like almost like modern, sculpture, abstract.
I was thrilled because somebody told me, looking at them one time, that they reminded him of Ruth Asawa's work, and I was like, she was my first art teacher, so there's probably something in that. Like, what aesthetically pleases me probably owes something to her aesthetic. So yeah, that's what the math baskets are, and they're all based in equations that I write before I weave it, so I don't know what it's going to look like, but I'm meticulously working through a series of assignments that I've given myself based on numbers.
This concept that you're bringing forward through the creation of this abstract math basket brings me to a question I've always wanted to ask you, which is like an aspect of your personality that I've witnessed personally, but then I've also like see sometimes come through your writing too. But so I've heard you, and it's like this foolish gesture, this trickster quality to you, and I've heard you say that you embrace this quality as a poet and an artist, and that you even believe in carrying a bubble wand, you carry a cat's cradle string. And when I saw you give your inauguration speech at the library, the vision that I remember like distinctly, because I was there in person, was these hats that you kept like wearing, and I was just like, wow, what is happening? What's she gonna put on next? And you kept switching these hats, and some of the hats, as you were giving this very profound inauguration speech, you had one colorful hat after the next, and some might have been animal forms and things like that.
Yeah,
but
there's a squid hat.
yeah, squid, that's the one I remember the most. But tell me about, for you, like the importance of being playful, like this quality of fun and surprise that's in your work, but also in your personal life.
There speaks a person who's been to my house and listened to a whole bunch of speeches. I think I wore a cat hat before it was a big thing to the first thing I did here in North Beach after getting inaugurated too. I spent a lot of time being very serious. And it's extremely, a lot of my childhood and my early, into my 20s, I was a very serious person. And that came from probably anxiety on the part of my parents. I just picked it right up. Two different cultures that have been recently exposed to genocidal behavior, and people will tense up and seize up and not really be able to move forward with release. You know, it's hard to find that. And it's you know, the genocide of Native people is ongoing, Native women and others, but my focus is on women, so that's what I talk about. They disappear and show up dead at alarming rates, and San Francisco's in the top 20 of places that happens, but people don't know it. And you know, so it's easy to be dour and serious, and I think for my mental well-being, I needed to change in order to make myself be happier. And we're there. I've definitely shifted it. You can get a lot more done if people write you off a little bit. You know, I had been identified as being very, very bright as a child. And it was a barrier between myself and people, in the way I choose to encourage people to understand that that barrier is not necessary. We don't have to behave that way if we don't feel like it. I mean, if you still want to maintain that attitude towards me, you're welcome to, but I don't take myself all that seriously, you know. So that's really what that is. And the math baskets is my inner serious nerd sort of making itself known in a playful and curious way, you know. Because I think what people refer to as intellectual prowess, genius, whatever word you want to use for it, is actually a manifestation of your curiosity rather than anything else. I think it just means that you ask really good questions.
Do you think it's a manifestation of what you don't know?
Yeah.
As opposed to what you do know.
Some clarity about what is not known. And, so I kind of clown a bit. I know that my least favorite moment in recent performance was we went to Haskell Indian Nations University and we threw copies of all of the books I've done in there. It's like 10, something like that. There are many on the table, and most of them has some lightness in them, but there's one that I wrote called Murdered Missing, which is literally about murdered and missing Indigenous women. And the looks on the faces of the people as who got there early, who just sort of picked up books and were looking at them. And there's an array of sort of curious and introspective and all of that. And then the woman who picked up Murdered Missing cried. I don't want to make people cry. I do want to make them think. But for my own well-being, I had to get that one book out. Yeah. That was for me. So...
I also think it's okay if we make people cry as poets sometimes.
This was like bad, though. I had gone and read some of that book one time at Haskell and ended up having to stay an extra hour to talk to everybody and hear who they'd lost. I mean, that's how extreme it is in our communities, is that everybody has lost somebody.
How do you balance, because you are an artist and an amazing poet who's able to tackle these incredibly profoundly deep and challenging subjects like that emotionally, and it's on the personal level as well as the collective level, but in your work and your writing, like, how do you balance that with beauty, with the lightness that you're describing?
I'm glad you think I manage it. I'm not always sure that I do. I don't know. I mean, I just, I'm willing to hurt a little bit over these things when I'm working on it. I am not willing to injure other people too badly. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure I always hit the balance. Sometimes I hit the balance.
I think you definitely do. Well, Kim, I want to thank you so much for being here and sharing your words, your process, and what it's like to write, to be in the city, to witness the city, not only the people, the places, but the animals, the streams, the rivers, the tides. It's such a pleasure to know you. I feel so honored just to have you as a friend and to know you on that level, as well as witness your incredible work.
I view you as a ray of sunshine in human form, so I'm sort of delighted you feel that way, because I can kind of be a downer sometimes.
You make me smile, Kim Shuck.
I'm glad, because you make me smile too.
For listeners who want to learn more about Kim Shuck and her work, please find her and her mouth baskets on Instagram at kim.shuck. And find her books at your local independent bookstores, including Telegraph Hill Books. If you're in San Francisco, find her hosting the poetry series Poem Jam at the San Francisco Main Library every second Thursday from 6 to 7:15 on the lower level. And if you happen to be out of town, find videos of Poem Jam archived on the San Francisco Public Library's YouTube channel. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you for having me, Jen.
This podcast is brought to you by Telegraph Hill Arts and Literature. If you enjoyed today's episode, please follow, subscribe, and leave us a review. Visit telhighlit.org to find out about our local events such as author talks, writing workshops, and more. Consider making a donation to support our public programs. If you're a Bay Area author interested in being on the show, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us at submissions@telhighlit.org. Thanks again for tuning in. I'm Jennifer Barone, along with Joseph Carboni at Telegraph Hill Arts and Literature, and this has been Voices from the Hill. Until next time, keep reading, keep writing, stay inspired, and come visit us at Telegraph Hill Books in North Beach, San Francisco.